Here we go, guys. Good morning. The Committee on Appropriations is called to order. I want to welcome each and every one of you. We're going to start with the regular order. We have 6 bills before us today. 4 are due pass as amended recommendation. We have 1 bill before us, which is a candidate for suspense, and we have 1 measure which is on the consent file. We're going to go through these measures rather quickly, and then we're going to go to our suspense file. I want to make sure that we're done in an orderly fashion because we have members of this committee that have to get back home to their constituents as soon as possible. We're going to roll through these 6 measures before us very quickly. I believe we have established a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
De Leon.
Present.
Thank you. Conway.
Here.
Amiano. Calderon.
Here.
Cotto. Davis. Fuentes. Hall.
Present.
Harkey. Miller. Nielsen. John Perez.
Here.
Skinner. Solario. Strickland. Torlixon. Hill. We have a quorum.
Okay, we've established a quorum. Before today, we have Senator. Mr. Amiano has been established. Mr. Mark Leno, SB 678, the California Community Corrections Performance Incentives Act of 2009. Please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm really pleased to be here to present SB 678, which is joint authored by the Vice Chair of our Senate Public Safety Committee, John Benoit, who cannot be here but sends his greetings and support, of course. This is our community corrections bill, and it will, in fact, reduce our prison population, which we've been struggling to do. It will reduce crime in our communities, which we've been struggling to do, and it will save the state money. And so how are we going to do this? We're dealing with a population of about 250,000 felony probationers. Now, felony probationers are those who have been convicted of a felony but were not sent to state prison, so likely first-time offenders. We want to keep them from getting to state prison. So they've been sentenced to county jail and given some probation time in the county. To the degree that we can keep them successful in their probation, that means by definition they will not be committing additional crimes, we will have safer communities, and they will not get to state prison. The savings, by their not coming to state prison, we will share with the county through the chief probation officers to continue investing in evidence-based probation practices so that these probationers can succeed in their probation. About 40% of all of our new inmates in state prison are failed felony probationers, and in raw numbers that's about 20,000 annually. So this is a win-win-win, as I've just described, and I'm pleased to have the sponsorship of the chief probation officers, and Karen Pank is here to speak on behalf of the bill.
Okay, why don't we have the witnesses in support, and I'm going to ask the witnesses if you could be so kind enough to be as brief as possible.
Absolutely. Karen Pank, the Executive Director of the Chief Probation Officers of California, and as the Senator just stated, we are proud sponsors of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick Warner on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in support of the bill.
Just for the record, we have a motion made by Ms. Diane Harkey. We have a second by Mr. Tom Torlixon. Please proceed.
June Clark with the Judicial Council, also in support of the bill.
Elizabeth Howard on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. We see no downsides to this bill, great incentives and great investments. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support? All you have to do is say your name and just...
Sure. Mike Ricketts with the County Superintendents of Schools. We represent the 58 county superintendents throughout the state in support of the bill.
Thank you very much.
Steve Comer on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles County in support.
Thank you very much.
Pamela Gibbs, Los Angeles County Office of Education in support, and we also hope that the committee will consider the savings from Prop 98 that should also go down to the court school level.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, witnesses in opposition. Witness in opposition.
Libby Sanchez, Public Defenders, wanted to remove our opposition for the record.
Okay, for the record, there it is. Good work, Mr. Leno, for having the Public Defenders remove their opposition. Seeing no other opposition, DOF, do you have a file?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Rob Schladel for the Department of Finance. We are neutral on this bill. We identified costs of $502,000 for the Administrative Office of the Courts.
Okay, we have one question from Senator Jim Nielsen.
Actually, not a question, Mr. Chairman, but an observation and encouragement. I compliment Senator Leno for the bill. It is indeed headed in the right direction. This is a critical need within our communities. It is the right thing to do. But I would, and I'm not convinced the language is strong enough. It may well be. I've reviewed it with our author and with other advocates, but that there would be an incentive for probation officers to play games with statistics and not exercise the return to custody sanction for probation violators in order to qualify for those incentives. I would just encourage the probation community not to be trying to do those games, because I will certainly call you on it. And maybe the language, and there is some language that may handle it. I'm just not totally comfortable it is as strong as it possibly could be. And I was also concerned about smaller counties who do not have, cannot avail probationers the amount of resources for intervention and help that other counties can't. And I'm sort of convinced that there's some provision that the Senator has accommodated, and so I certainly do support the bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Nielsen. For the record, we have a bipartisan motion that's been made by Ms. Diane Harkey and has been seconded by Mr. Tom Torlakson. Let's call a Republican roll call.
Mr. Chair, just want to point out that there is an amendment, one requested by Assemblyman Nielsen, so that will be
with the technical amendment.
Victims representative on the advisory board, along with a county supervisor.
That is recognized. Let's call a Republican roll call.
Conway? Aye. Conway, aye. Harkey? Harkey, aye. Miller? Aye. Miller, aye. Nielsen? Aye. Nielsen, aye. Strickland?
Okay, this measure passes. Thank you very much. Mr. Leno. Mr. Senator Ashburn. Not voting, but Mr. Keller. Mr. Ashburn, good morning. We have a due pass recommendation for SB 726. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This will expand the current project, allowing qualified health districts and rural hospitals to directly employ physicians and surgeons. It will authorize such a district or a hospital to employ up to 2 of these physicians at a time. It is a pilot project until January 1st, 2010, with preliminary reports due in 2013 and a final report in 2016.
Mr. Ashburn, let me interrupt you just very quickly for the record. We have a motion that's been made by Mr. Tom Torlakson. It's been seconded by Mr. Jeff Miller. We have bipartisan motion. Let's go to your supporters.
Chairman and members, Barbara Glazer on behalf of the California Hospital Association in strong support. This is an important tool for our hospitals serving underserved communities.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Chairman and
Glazer.
members, William Flo on behalf of ASPE in strong support of the bill.
Thank you very much.
Chairman and members, Peter Gamby on behalf of the Association of California Healthcare Districts in strong support.
Okay.
Mike Smith, Sonoma Valley Healthcare District, legislative liaison.
Okay. Any other folks in support of the measure? Seeing none, those in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members, Brett Michelin with the California Medical Association, and I just have a few points I'd like to make as far as the fiscal aspects of the bill. I'd certainly be willing to answer any questions on the policy if there are any. I believe the committee analysis is missed several of the cost drivers in both the summary and the fiscal effects. The bill requires the medical board to verify a minimum of 4 certifications made for every single physician that would be hired. And the medical board must return a written communication within 5 days every time a facility wishes to employ a physician. The medical board must set up a mandatory dispute resolution process for clinical disagreements in the bill. The medical board does not have a dispute resolution process. They would have to contract out or somehow create it. That costs money. The board must verify a clear showing of need. This is a discretionary act on the part of the medical board, and if there's disagreement, it opens the medical board up to lawsuit. And the 2 reports are mentioned. The analysis says that this is all an absorbable workload. The medical board recently reported that they have 650 physicians who have applied for licensure, and they have been unable to complete the licensure process in their regulatory timelines. That's 650 physicians willing to work in California that can't come because the medical board cannot complete their primary responsibility. This bill puts more burden on the medical board, of which they already cannot complete what they're supposed to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any more opposition, please?
Yes, Allison Ramey on behalf of the California Primary Care Association. We had held an oppose unless amended, but unfortunately the amendments that author offered were not enough to address our concerns. We do appreciate the effort of the author and the other stakeholders, but do take an opposed position at this time.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. I think we have a question or commentary from Ms. Harkey.
Hi, Senator. I'd just like to state that I have I'm sure some rural counties need this facility or need this, and I don't want to interfere in anyone's district. However, if it's a district bill, then I think it should just apply maybe to district hospitals and rural communities with large underserved populations. I've received numerous calls from physicians in my district, and even one from our district hospital. They're intent on remaining independent and in their practice of medicine and free to choose how they serve their community. And with the reports from the two opposition, I just want to add that comment. Thank you.
Okay, do you have file?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the costs are minor and absorbable.
Okay, Ms. Conway.
Me first.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, I've supported this in the past. I am really torn, and I have to tell you, I'm just unhappy. This applies to to the rural areas that really need this, and yet the more I study it and the more I look at it, I just wish that the parties that brought it here and brought it to you and have been working with you had done a better job of giving us something that suited the needs of, in particular, the people I represent a little bit better. First time I supported it, it was pretty much wholeheartedly. The second time, the process, as you know, was a little bit much for me. I'm not happy with any of it at this point, and because of that, I'm going to stay off. But there's got to be a better way to do business, and I would hope in the future that we could do that, to have something that we could both agree on. And I understand, Senator, I'll talk to you about this later. I'm just saying for the record, for this vote, I'm staying off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Conway. We do have a motion, bipartisan motion, in front of us. I'm sorry, Mr. John Paris, go ahead.
Thank you. I understand the frustration. I share some of it. Quite frankly, I'm more supportive of it in the form that it's in now than in previous forms. I voted against this bill in committee. My frustration comes out of the fact that we weren't able to look at this in the policy committee after you took the amendment. So I'm working based on my review of this being similar to two other bills that I had previously supported in policy committee. But I really do think this should have gone back to the policy committee after you took the degree of substantive amendments that you did. I'm going to support it moving forward, but I need to make sure that it actually is consistent with those other two bills that we had addressed in policy committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Perez. We do have a motion from Mr. Tarlickson. We've already gone to finance and Mr. Miller. Let's call a Republican roll call.
Conway. Harkey. Harkey, no. Miller. Miller, aye. Nielsen. Nielsen, aye. Strickland. Strickland, aye.
Mr. Ashburn, this measure passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Senator Alquist. Senator Alquist, good morning.
Good morning.
You have one measure before today. Is a candidate for suspense.
Yes.
Would you like to proceed? SB 307.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Absolutely. SB 307 has no general fund costs and has been marked non-fiscal. I believe the general fund cost pressure.
Move the bill.
Move it twice.
Dispense.
Go ahead.
Estimate in the committee analysis is incorrect. I say that respectfully. I believe the potential problem the cost estimate is based on is already dealt with in current law through local control, as my witnesses will testify. SB 307 has potential savings by making operable from my bill from last year, SB 1197, which created efficiencies in the funding process for regional occupational centers and programs, ROCPs. This bill helps our career tech programs. It upholds the principles of funding flexibility and local control, and I will let complete support from educational communities and have witnesses to speak to some of the points.
Absolutely, Ms. Alquist. I'm going to ask witnesses, I believe there's a handful of them, to be as succinct as possible. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Ricketts with the County Superintendents of Schools. We're in support of the bill. We view this as really a technical cleanup to harmonize previous legislation, SB 1197, carried by Senator Alquist last year, with changes that were made in the Budget Act this year related to the use of funds for ROPs and other categorical programs. We were a little bit surprised that it came to this committee. We think there is no fiscal impact associated with this bill. It does honor the existing governance structures that are in place. JPA-operated ROPs are just like county-operated ROPs. They serve a number of districts, all of whom have a voice in how the ROP operates and how those funds are used. That will continue under the provisions of this bill, and in fact is really the appropriate place for those decisions to be made. And so we're in support of the bill as it's written and would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next witness.
Peter Birdsall with the California Association of Regional Occupation Centers and Programs. Real briefly on the fiscal impact of the bill. The reason districts come together in a joint powers agreement is because some of these programs are very expensive to operate. Automotive technology, if you're going to meet industry certification, you have to have expensive computer equipment, maintain it, et cetera. If a district wants to, the concern raised in the analysis is that if a district wants to pull out of the JPA, and it doesn't get what it believes is fair share, it may create cost pressure by asking the state to backfill that funding. We've had JPAs in the state for 40 years. Over that time, we've had dozens of cases of districts wanting to pull out, reorganize, change cost sharings. That has always been resolved at the local level. It has never been brought to the state to backfill. I think the history of the local mechanism is working is very clear. We urge your support.
Terry Burns on behalf of the California Association of Leaders of Career Preparation, and we appreciate that this bill honors local control and local flexibility with funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Lacoste representing the Metropolitan Education District in Santa Clara County, and we are in support.
Thank you. Mr. Ellison.
Brooks Ellison on behalf of the Southern California Regional Occupation Center in support, and it's been in continuous existence since 1967 without any issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dennis Myers with the California Association of School Business Officials in full support.
Jeff Freitas with the California Federation of Teachers in full support.
Thank you.
Adonai Mack with the Association of California School Administrators, also in support.
All right, thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, any witnesses in opposition? Also seeing none, do you have to have a file?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We find this bill would have no state or local fiscal impact.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to close?
Ask for your support.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this is a candidate for suspense, and we have a comment.
Just a brief comment. It seems like a logical way to clarify some things in the budget process with these local JPA members. They have options, so I'd like to ask, as the bill goes to suspense, that we very carefully look at the cost, because it seems from the witnesses that there be virtually no cost to this legislation, and it seems like a good cleanup piece of legislation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Charlton. Thank you, Ms. Alquist.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Mr. De La Torre. Mr. De La Torre, you have a committee bill before us, which is AB 1585, both you as well as Ms. Strickland. Would you like to open up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. AB 1585 is authored by all 18 members of the Assembly Accountability and Administrative Review Committee. It would delete 1,200 obsolete state reports and improve the existing system for processing and making such reports available to the public in the future.
We have a motion that's been made by Mr. Jeff Miller. We have second by Mr. Tom Amiano. Ms. Strickland, would you like to impart a few words of wisdom with us?
I would just like to say that all the Republican and Democrat members alike have agreed on this bill through the committee process. There have been no votes. This is an excellent opportunity for us to root out some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that we always discuss under the chairman's good leadership. So here to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. I think you're absolutely right. The motion that's been made is a reflection of the bipartisan support for your measure. Do we have witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition? Also seeing none. Mr. De La Torre, do you have a witness right there? No?
No,
Okay.
staff.
DOF, do you have a file?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we actually have not completed our review of the bill. However, we assume that this will be minor costs associated with the bill.
Okay.
No minor costs.
savings.
Minor savings associated with the bill.
Okay. We have a motion that's been made by Mr. Jeff Miller. It's been seconded by Mr. Tom Amiano, Mr. De La Torre, as well as Ms. Strickland. This measure passes on a roll call. Thank you very much, Mr. De La Torre.
Thank you.
We're done. Thank you.
We think it's minor because
Sergeants, if you could be so kind to call Mr. Dean Flores.
this isn't my bill, so
do an assessment of the savings, but do you have a card? I can call you.
I would probably give your information to the staff. It's an entirely different part of finance than me, and I would have them call you.
Okay, do you know who it would be?
I believe Kristen Shelton.
Okay, just have her give me a call and I'll explain to her what's going on because she's going to have to see it again.
Ms. Flores, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
You have one measure before us today. We want to be very quick about it. You have SB 364 is a due pass recommendation as amended to delete the biopharma intent language. It's a measure that came across this committee just recently. Please move forward with your testimony.
I'll be brief, Mr.
and
Chairman.
ask you to please
Move
be
the
brief.
bill.
This for the motion. You have a motion that's been made by Mr. Amiano. It's been seconded by Mr. Jose Solorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. This bill would prevent cancer research facilities from employing directors or officers that also profit from the sale of tobacco products. We just believe as a matter of public policy, the state should prevent this practice. The bill has no fiscal impact on the state, and we have agreed, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, for amendments that would remove the pharmaceutical industry's opposition to this bill. It is supported by the California Medical Association. We do have witnesses' support. Ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Witness in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Teresa Stark with the California Medical Association. We are in support. This is a good bill for patients and for the public health. We urge your
Okay.
support.
Other witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition?
Andrew Governor, Governmental Advocates on behalf of Bay Bio. We appreciate working with the author and Appropriations Committee staff on removing the language that dealt with biotechs. Based on that removal of the language, we are now neutral on the bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm Fred Note, representing Pharma, same position, we're now neutral. We appreciate everyone's help on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any witnesses in opposition? Saying none. Do you have a file?
Yes, we have minor and absorbable costs for the bill.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Amiano. We have a second by Mr. Solorio. This motion passes on a B roll call.
Question.
Oh, please go ahead. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank the senator for removing biotech and pharma from the bill. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. All righty. There you go. Thank you much, Mr.
Thank you.
Flores. Thank you. Colleagues, we're going to begin the suspense file. This year, the Appropriations Committee placed approximately 90 Senate bills on suspense. All told, those measures proposed out-year spending of more than $600 million from all fund sources. $600 million is the lowest amount of proposed spending in recent memory. While the committee will recommend passage of slightly more than half of those bills, the committee will approve less than $4 million in ongoing general fund expenditures. I want to underscore and highlight and italicize and bold, if you will, that is the lowest amount ever approved by this committee. This has been a very, very difficult year, full of very difficult decisions. The suspense process was no exception. While there's good economic views coming out of Washington, D.C., the bottom line is our fiscal situation remains dire here in California, and we're forced to make many difficult decisions regarding many important bills. Many bills will be held in committee today. Their failure to proceed to the Assembly does not reflect or measure their success or value. Many measures have spurred new thinking and creativity that I believe will ultimately lead to reform and that will improve government and benefit our constituents, regardless of one's political party. Even in this very difficult legislative year, the foundation has been laid for a stronger future. I want to thank my Senate colleagues for their efforts and dedication on a wide variety of very important issues on their constituents' behalf. I also want to thank my colleagues on this Appropriations Committee who have patiently served as members of this fiscal committee. I would especially like to thank my Vice Chair, Connie Conway, and my former Vice Chair, Mr. Jim Nielsen, for their assistance and help coordinating these meetings. Finally, I do want to thank and give a very special, warm recognition to the staff, both Democratic as well as Republican fiscal staff, for their hard work and their diligence on the many measures that we have poured over night after night. I am indebted to each and every one of you. I want to thank you again. It is approximately 12:22 p.m. I'd like to get out of here no less than 1:22. We will begin our suspense file on the topic of education. Does everyone have a copy? What's this one? We'll begin with education, SB 106. Ms. Wiggins, hold in committee. SB 147, Mr. Desagnier, do pass. In fact, I'd like a motion as well as a second. We have a motion made by Mr. John Perez. I need a second by Mr. Jose Solorio. Be mindful that I will take that motion for first suspense bill, and then I will substitute that as a roll call going forward. So 147, do pass as recommendation. B, roll call.
Strickland, aye.
No, not yet. Afterwards. SB 193, Mr. Alan Lowenthal, authorizing the Long Beach Unified School District to receive full funding for class size reduction. Guys, do pass, a roll call. SB 217, Mr. Leland Yee, hold in committee. SB 248, Ms. Jenny Oropesa, subject requiring community college and CS CSU to post Title IX information on its internet websites. Do pass with amendments to limit the posting of information to a website, which will reduce the cost. B, roll call. SB 307 by Ms. Alquist. Recommendation, hold in committee. SB 334, Ms. Duchesne, increases construction grants for special education pupils. Do pass as recommendation. B, roll call. SB 365, Ms. Duchesne, changes the composition of the State Allocation Board duties of the Office of Public School Construction. Recommendation, hold in committee. SB 471, Ms. Gloria Romero, establishing the California Stem Cell Biotechnology Education and Workforce Development Act of 2009. Do pass with amendments to, one, to delete the curriculum portion of the bill, which will remove all costs, and to delete language regarding CIRM funding. B, roll call. SB 552, Mr. Alex Padilla, requires organ and tissue donation instruction and health classes. Hold in committee. SB 651, Ms. Gloria Romero, establishes annual reporting on dropouts. Do pass recommendation. A, roll call. SB 682, Mr. Alex Padilla, authorizes the County Office of Education to establish a pilot program for autism spectrum disorders. Recommendation, hold in committee. SB 742, Ms. Gloria Romero, establishes a process to identify the 10 historically low-performing school sites in the state until July 1st, 2016. Hold in committee. SB 747, Ms. Gloria Romero, establishing a pilot aerospace program for high school pupils. Hold in committee. Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, Senator Carol Liu, calls for the state to adopt a higher education tax credit once the state's economic conditions improve. Hold in committee. Colleagues, will go to criminal justice. SB 38, Senator Alquist, Senior Alert System. Hold in committee. SB 150, Senator Wright, subject sentencing. Do pass recommendation. A, roll call. SB 154, Senator Benoit, boating under the influence. Hold in committee. SB 588, Senator Leno, Sex Offender Management Board sunset. Do pass recommendation. A, roll call. SB 598, Senator Huff, DUI ignition interlock devices. Recommendation, do pass with technical and clarifying amendments. A, roll call. We'll go on to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 117, Senator Corbett, extending adult day health care centers rate deadlines. Do pass recommendation as amended to extend the deadlines an additional year. B, roll call. SB 118, Senator Carol Liu, subject including information about incarcerated parents and children's care plans. Do pass with clarifying amendments. Recommendation. A, roll call. SB 132, Mr. Jeff Denham, regarding sleep technologists. Do pass as amended to modify fee provision. A, roll call. Senator SB 158, Senator Wiggins, requiring HPV vaccination coverage. Recommendation, do pass as amended to clarify timelines. B, roll call. SB 161, Senator Rod Wright, requiring oral chemotherapy health coverage. Recommendation, do pass as amended to make clarifying changes and to add co-authors. B, roll call. SB 499, Senator Duchesne, subject requiring Mr. Mibb to report on funding transfers. Recommendation, do pass. A, roll call. SB 578, Mr. Rod Wright, waiving interest on past due child support. hold in committee. SB 597, Senator Carol Luke, conforming state law to the Federal Fostering Connections Act of 2008. Recommendation do pass with amendments that remove costs and make further required federal conforming changes. A roll call. SB 630, Mr. Darrell Steinberg, requiring coverage for cleft palate related treatment in the private sector. Recommendation do pass as amended to clarify legislative intent. B roll call.
Strickland not voting.
SB 702, Mr. Marc Desaulniers, requiring background clearances for temporary child care service providers. Do pass with amendments that remove costs by requiring DSS to increase fees to cover the cost of trust line as allowed by current law. B roll call. With Ms. Audra Strickland as an aye vote. SB 744, Senator Tony Strickland, funding and regulation of licensed laboratories. Recommendation do pass. A roll call. SB 769, Senator Alquist, funding pandemic flu activities with federal grants. That's H1N1. Recommendation do pass as amended to clarify county minimum allocation provisions. A roll call. SB 774, Senator Roy Ashburn, requiring background checks for child welfare service job applicants. Hold in committee. SB 788, Mr. Mark Weiland, regarding licensing professional clinical counselors. Recommendation do pass. A roll call. We'll now go to general and local government, business, housing, transportation, agriculture, jobs, and utilities. AB 1506, Assembly Member Joel Anderson, requiring state agencies to accept registered warrants. Recommendation do pass with amendments adding July 1, 2012 sunset exclusion, certain federal payments, and ensuring no negative effects on state cash flow or costs. A roll call. ACA. Number 2, Mr. Warren Furatani allows 17-year-olds to vote in a primary election if 18-year-olds by the general election. Recommendation do pass. B roll call. ACA number 3, Mr. Sam Blakesley, limiting initiative bond measures to $1 billion unless a fund source for debt service is identified. Recommendation do pass. A roll call. ACA 5, Mr. Chuck Calderon, requires initiative bond measure to be approved by at least 55% of those voting on that initiative. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. Harkey not voting. ACA 13, Mr. Dr. Ed Hernandez proposes to amend the state constitution to establish an indirect initiative process. Recommendation do pass with clarifying amendments and an amendment deleting the requirement for initiative proponents to obtain additional signatures. B roll call. ACA 21, Mr. Chuck Calderon, authorizing the legislature to propose amendments to voter-approved initiatives. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. ACR number 77, Mr. Sandre Swanson, encouraging an economic impact analysis of AB 32. Recommendation is do pass. A roll call. Senate Bill number 2, Ms. Pat Wiggins, extending the Pierce Disease Control Program. Recommendation is do pass. A roll call. SB 10, Mr. Mark Leno, authorizing counties to levy local vehicle license fees. Hold in committee. SB 14, Mr. Simidian, increases the state's renewable portfolio standards. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. SB 17, Mr. Alex Padilla, provides for planning and deployment of smart grid electrical distribution systems. Recommendation is do pass. A roll call. SB 32, Ms. Gloria Negrete McLeod, expands eligibility under the existing feed-in tariff FIT program and requires publicly owned utilities to establish FIT programs. Do pass with amendments is the recommendation specifying conditions for approval and operation of FIT renewable energy facility by an IOU or local public utility. 2, deleting prohibition on the PUC's authority to implement other FIT tariffs. And 3, clarifying technical and clarifying amendments. B, roll call. SB 36, Strickland, aye. SB 36, Mr. Ron Calderon, establishing new requirements for mortgage loan originators. Recommendation do pass with amendments, adding urgency clause and making technical changes. A, roll call. Ms. Diane Harkey, not voting. SB 98, Mr. Ron Calderon, regulating life settlements. Recommendation is do pass. A, roll call. SB 99, Ms. Pat Wiggins, additional transparency for conduit financing providers. Recommendations do pass with amendments, reducing Secretary of State costs. A, roll call. SB 140, Ms. Corbett, establishing a mandatory citrus stock pest cleanliness program. Recommendations do pass with amendments, clarifying that the industry assessment must cover all costs of the program. B, roll call. SB 202, Mr. Tom Harmon, requiring continuing ethics education for private investigators. This will be paid exclusively from fees in the private sector. Recommendation is do pass. A, roll call. SB 206, Ms. Lonnie Hancock, authorizing local motor vehicle registration fees for traffic congestion. Hold in committee. SB 213, Senator Dean Flores, extending a moratorium on card clubs until 2020. Recommendation do pass. A, roll call. SB 250, Senator Dean Flores, requiring pet sterilization. Recommendations do pass with amendments exempting certain working dogs such as guide dogs, herding dogs, hunting dogs, and rescue dogs. B, roll call. Harkey, not voting. SB 260, Ms. Pat Wiggins, increasing the oil revenue fee. Recommendation do pass. B, roll call. SB 357, Senator Ducheney, extending the sunset formula for Indian gaming local mitigation grants. Recommendation do pass. A, roll call. SB 363, Ms. Hancock, authorizes the creation of new account to deposit funds for school energy efficiency and solar energy installation projects. Hold in committee. SB 374, Mr. Ron Calderon, creating standards for personal trainers. Hold in committee. SB 391, Senator Carol Liu, requires a California transportation plan to incorporate AB 32 emission reduction goals. Recommendation is do pass. B, roll call. SB 406, Senator Mark Desagne, authorizing local imposition of fee for regional land use planning. Recommendations do pass as amended to change fee structure. B, roll call. SB 407, Mr. Alex Padilla, requiring replacement of non-compliant plumbing fixtures over the next decade. Recommendation is do pass with amendments adding fee disclaimer for mandated costs. B, roll call. SB 488, Senator Fran Pavley, requires that utilities report on savings achieved through comparative energy usage programs. Recommendations do pass with clarifying amendments. A, roll call. Ms. Diane Harkey, not voting. And Senator Nielsen, no. SB 505, Ms. Christine Kehoe, expanding fire safety elements in certain local general plans. Recommendation do pass. B, roll call. SB 517, Senator Dean Flores, altering the horse racing takeout. Recommendation do pass with amendments, adding fiscal reporting requirements. B, roll call. Strike that. A, roll call. SB 542, Ms. Pat Wiggins, targets energy efficiency and solar energy programs to multi-tenant properties. Hold in committee. SB 545, Senator Cedillo, requires the Interstate 710 freeway gap closure project to be constructed as a bored tunnel. Recommendation do pass. B, roll call. SB 599, Senator Negrete McLeod extends the funding for dental core loan repayment program and facilities workforce investment board's collaboration with private secondary institutions. Recommendations do pass with clarifying amendments. A roll call. SB 684, Mr. Cogdell, capping certain property tax allocations to schools in 6 counties, hold in committee. SB 766, Ms. Negrete McLeod, allowing flexibility within the horse racing takeout. Recommendations do pass with amendments, adding fiscal reporting requirements. A roll call. SB 813, Christine Kehoe, requires HCD to offer loans secured by future appropriation to certain low-income home buyers. Recommendations do pass with amendments. B roll call. We'll go now to subject matter Rev and Tax. Revenue and Taxation. ACA, number 6. Mr. Chuck Calderon, limiting operative period of new and extended tax expenditures. Recommendation, do pass. B roll call. ACA, number 9. Mr. Jared Huffman, lowering local vote thresholds for special taxes and bond authorizations. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. SB 138, Ms. Carol Liu, increasing the maximum amount of graffiti prevention tax that could be approved by local voters, hold in committee. SB 323, Ms. Jenny Oropesa, authorizes taxpayers to direct refunds to qualified tuition program account, hold in committee. SB 401, Ms. Lois Wolk, strengthening law related to abuse of tax shelters. Recommendations do pass with technical amendments. B roll call. SB 402, Ms. Lois Wolk, requiring the Franchise Tax Board to institute a financial records match system to collect delinquent taxes. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. SB 765, Senator Dutton, providing a limited sales tax exemption for thrift stores operating on military bases. The recommendation is do pass with amendments limiting exemption to thrift stores operated in partnership with the United States Department of Defense. A roll call. We'll now go to resources. SB 167, Ms. Duchesne, authorizes tire fee money for cleanup of waste tires along the U.S.-Mexican border. Recommendation is do pass. B roll call. SB 310, Ms. Duchesne, water quality, stormwater, and other runoff. Recommendation is do pass with amendments. B roll call. SB 317, Mr. Simidian, fire alarm device collection, hold in committee. SB 486, Mr. Simidian, medical waste, Sharps waste. Recommendations do pass as amended to remove references to devices not covered under Medicaid, or Medicare, I should say, Part B. B roll call. SB 524, Senator Lou Correa, solid waste auto shredder residue. Recommendation do pass. A roll call. SB 546, Senator Lowenthal, subject matter used oil. Recommendation do pass as amended. B roll call. SB 619, Senator Tony Strickland, flood control, County of Santa Barbara, Lower Mission Creek. Recommendation do pass. A roll call. SB 679, Ms. Lois Wolk, subject matter, state parks acquire land, limits on disposition or use. Recommendation is do pass with as amended with amendments to allow combination of substitute land as well as monetary compensation equal to or exceeding the fair market value of the state park land being lost. B, roll call. SB 757, Ms. Fran Pavley, with regards to lead will weights. Recommendation do pass. B, roll call. SB 790, Ms. Fran Pavley, with regards to water quality, stormwater resource plans. Recommendation do pass. B roll call. Colleagues, our last subject matter before us today, the Appropriations Committee, is Labor and Public Employment. SB 410, Senator Duchesne. Subject, oversight of federal funds for workforce readiness programs. These are the ARA economic stimulus dollars. Recommendation is do pass. B, roll call. Final bill before us is SB 519, Senator Ashburn, eliminating sunset for survivor benefits. Recommendation is do pass. A, roll call. We have one measure before us today that is SB 592, that is on the consent file. That is Ms. Gloria Romero. Can I get a motion as well as a second? Got a motion from Mr. Solorio. We have a second by Mr. Mike Davis. SB 592 passes. On an A, roll call. Colleagues, this ends the work before this Appropriations Committee today. I want to thank each and every one of you for your patience, for your hard work. This committee is adjourned.